Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fascinating Womanhood channel, where we talk about everything that has to do with developing femininity and building strong, long-lasting, loving relationships. I am Cherry Lynn, and I'm here with my mom, Dixie and Forsyth. Hi.
Hi.
So today we're doing something a little different. We are reviewing the movie Being the Ricardos. It just came out in 2021, about 2 months ago, I want to say.
Yeah, not very long.
Yeah, and we both had the chance to see it, and we felt compelled to review the movie because there are some fascinating womanhood principles in the movie, but there are also some kind of devastatingly horrible examples of femininity
and don't let this happen to you kind of moments.
Yeah, well, we've noticed that our viewers are seeming to kind of like it when we talk about poor examples within a marriage and in a relationship rather than just talking about positive. Sometimes it helps to see those poor examples.
This is about Lucille Ball and her husband, Desi Arnaz, but keep in mind, Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball were real people. This movie may or may not be totally accurate as to their lives. So we just don't know. So this is the portrayal of them, whether it's totally accurate or not.
It's starring Javier Bardem as Desi Arnaz and Nicole Kidman as Lucille Ball. We're not going to get too much into the actual story and critique the movie within, the acting. And that's not really the goal today.
No,
it's more about pointing out where Fascinating Womanhood is present and where we feel like they portrayed this couple, this famous couple, and showed examples of not the greatest choices within a relationship and in a marriage.
Well, and the reason we're doing this is because some of the ladies have kind of a hard time when they read about the principles, understanding how it works in real life or doesn't work, what a bad example of that is or what a good example. We're not picking on or trying to pick on any real people, but just so you can see when this character in this movie did this was not good. And if you ever find yourself doing any of those things, you'll recognize it and realize that how destructive it can be.
Exactly.
Or how good it can be if she's doing something well.
I'm sure a lot of you might be thinking, well, why this movie? Why did you choose this movie to review? There's so many movies that have come out over the last year or so that we could have chosen. Why this one?
I Love Lucy is not only iconic, it remains extremely popular all over the world. If you've never seen an I Love Lucy episode, you're probably in the minority.
I also have to add that you and I personally absolutely love Lucille Ball and I Love Lucy. And I grew up watching it even before I was in school. I remember being in preschool and having lunch and watching I Love Lucy when I was like 4. And I love Lucy. And I've always loved it so much. And I have to be honest, I was just so excited when I saw the preview for this movie. I know you were too. And there was a lot of hype for us personally to see it. I've read books about Lucille Ball. I've watched all of her interviews on late night shows on YouTube. Like, I just love Lucille Ball. And I have to say, watching this was really tough. It was kind of painful. Mm-hmm. And we can get into why, but I was just hoping that it would be just a tiny bit more positive, and it just seemed maybe it was real. Maybe this is like a real portrayal. I don't know, but it was tough to watch.
We didn't know her, so we have to just leave that to history.
Yeah. So anybody that's maybe a fan of I Love Lucy or Lucille Ball and you haven't seen this yet, I'm just a fair warning. It's kind of tough to watch. And I love Nicole Kidman as an actress. I think she's such a talented actress, and I think Javier Bardem is an amazing actor too. It's not about them. It's just about, I think, some of the writing that was really painful to watch. So we're going to start with just some of the list of positives that we saw, and then we'll kind of dig into some of the harder things.
Lucille Ball, just like if you've watched I Love Lucy, she was always very well dressed, always very feminine. I noticed when I used to watch I Love Lucy, her nails are always impeccable. And she was made up for the show, but I think she always did take care of herself and present well.
And they showed that in the movie. They actually did a really nice job. Nicole Kidman's wardrobe was really lovely. The way that she, for the most part, just kind of presented herself in the movie was really polished. And that is something that we agree with Fascinating Womanhood. We're always about, feminine appearance. And for the most part, even when she wore kind of what they called, I think in those days, kind of manly trousers and things, I think she still looked really feminine in the movie, which was good.
Well, she always had her hair and makeup done. She didn't ever look like a man. As far as her character goes, the positives, there were times like when in the show, it covers a very not awkward, but painful week in her life where she was accused of being a communist. And that was going on in that period of time in the 50s. They were accusing all kinds of people of being communists.
Yeah.
And the reality is that to support her grandfather, she checked the box that said she was a communist on this form.
I'm not a communist. I've never been a communist, but technically, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
But she didn't even really know what it was. She didn't feel like a communist, but her grandfather was real socialist and he kind of sympathized with communist ideas. And so she was loyal to him by doing that. She had no idea that it would come back to hurt her years later.
Man, he raised my little brother and me, and I wanted to please him. So I checked the box.
So why was that a character?
Because she was loyal to her grandfather. She was trying to support him. It was not a great choice, but her intention was to support her grandfather, which was a sign of character.
I think that Desi recognized that as well. And he noticed that she did that. And I think in return, he wanted to stand up for her and protect her. And I think that's great.
Nothing's going to happen to you. I won't allow it.
No one can ever tell what you do today that you mean to do something good might end up hurting you years later. The best we can do is to have our intent in the right place and try today to live as good of a life as we can and to be honorable and honest and supportive. And that's what she did then.
I think as far as Lucille Ball in this movie, they portrayed her positively as a very loyal person, a loyal friend for the, I mean, I don't know what the truth was in real life. We could go around in circles about that, but in the movie, they portrayed her as rather loyal, not all the time, but a rather loyal character, especially with Desi, even though I think there were moments where she was kind of not the nicest to him, but she still showed him loyalty in some moments.
You really want me to come down to the club?
Why not?
Okay.
He's working nights and she's working days, and he asks her to come, and she comes and she shows up and she looks beautiful and she watches him sing. And that's a small little sliver of a moment, but it was a good moment for someone who was just so challenged in her marriage. She showed up for him. She showed loyalty.
Well, and this was his real club, not the club portrayed in the TV show.
This is before I Love Lucy.
Before I Love Lucy. There was a scene where I can't remember exactly what happened.
It's a scene where Desi makes a really amazing business decision, and the producers of the show see it, and she says,
And that wasn't even why I married him.
it was a way that she, like you said, validated him in front of.
And validating your man in front of others is really a good idea. It shows them another level of sincerity. If you can, just make sure that you mean it, that it's specific and sincere. And she not only agreed with him, she said, that isn't even why I married him. So in other words, you haven't seen anything yet.
I think the point we're trying to make here is that he was very talented and he was brilliant at what he did, but hardly anyone saw that, but she saw it. And I think that's what's so great about that movie, is that it did show that she cared about him enough to stand up for how much she believed in him. Even to powerful CBS executives, she stood up for him. I mean, even the fact that they made I Love Lucy with him was because she said, I want my marriage to be saved. I want him to play my husband. I don't want another man to play my husband. I think that that's great.
She insisted against quite a bit of odds. People said, no one will believe that a Cuban is your husband. And she said, but he is my husband.
I'm ready and eager to do a half-hour domestic comedy for CBS. If the role of my husband, let's call him Schmezzy, is played by Desi.
She wouldn't have even done I Love Lucy if they hadn't let Desi play her husband, I think.
You know, the reason why their marriage lasted as long as it did is because of some of those moments that, keep in mind, just moments, because there were a lot of bad moments, but perhaps one of the reasons why it lasted as long as it did is because she was able to be loyal to him, show her love for him, validate him in those ways with work. There's a scene where she says,
I know.
Every decision I make is based on being near you. Every single decision.
she doesn't actually mean that, but it was a positive moment that she was trying. I mean, it was really hard to find positive moments in the movie. And so we're trying to point out those little tiny, tiny slivers of positive. And that was a positive moment, even though she didn't really mean it. I think she was trying.
She also said he doesn't get credit. He doesn't get enough credit. She validated him there too.
I believe they're on stage, or I think they're maybe even in a private meeting. They're either in a private meeting or they're on rehearsal. And she says he doesn't get credit. I think that's another just a tiny little example of her pointing out how valuable he is in front of him.
Well, it was produced by somebody else, and she wanted him to have credit on the credits.
What do you mean?
He doesn't get credit as an executive producer, which, let's face it, is what he is.
There's one thing crediting him saying, oh, you're doing a good job. But there's another thing. He wanted to have credit on the list of credits. And at one point he didn't. And later on, she insisted, made it possible for him to, I think he was listed as a producer later.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, he was just an actor, but he wasn't even the star. She was the star.
Yeah. There's an amazing moment in the movie, probably the best moment, I think, is when CBS executive asks Lucy if she can picture Desi playing a fifth senior vice president of a bank. This is the part where she was pitching for him to be her husband in the show. Ricardo was supposed to be a fifth senior vice president of a bank. And she says, I love this part. She says,
I can't see him being the fifth vice president of anything. I can see him owning the bank.
Yeah, that was
just such a great moment. I don't know if it's true or not, if it really happened, but it was such a great moment because she was saying, not only is he worth this role, you're lucky to have him in this role because he's so brilliant. And that was one of the moments where they let her have him play the part. And she had to fight for that. And I just thought that was such a great scene. It kind of gave me goosebumps because I was like, oh, yes, she's right. And she's standing. If only he'd been in the room, though. He wasn't in the room for that part.
There was in real life, some really sweet moments between them.
And if anybody wants to really get into the subject and do your own research, there is a documentary called Lucy and Desi, a whole movie that was made in the 90s.
I saw that, yeah.
If you watch that and see how in love they were, just incredibly in love they were. If you watch that documentary, you'll see that there was a miss in Being the Ricardos a little bit with how much they were in love with each other. The Being the Ricardos just chose to portray that they were always fighting. In reality, from what you see in that documentary, which was made by their daughter, by the way, that documentary was made by their daughter. It was produced by their daughter. They were really in love. Even when they were fighting, they were really in love. And Being the Ricardos made it look like they were only together for physical reasons. The romance was only physical romance. It wasn't a deep love. And I think that's what was really missed in the movie. They didn't show any of that. There was no chemistry between Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem. There was no deep love shown at all. It was more just about sex. And it wasn't about any of those things you see in their old home movies. And when they were really just even the love letters they used to write each other, they didn't show any of that. They didn't show any of that love. And that was disappointing.
I'm kind of typical of Hollywood these days. Their way of showing love is sex. And that's one manifestation of it. It doesn't even have to be, sex doesn't even have to be about love with some people. It isn't a great portrayal to show great love between a couple.
Well, and I've read some of the books, Lucille Ball's books. I've read some of those things. And, she really was just so ridiculously in love with him. Even when things were rocky, they were still really in love. Even when they had affairs and all these things, they still just had such a deep connection. And that was not shown in this movie really.
Well, I think they did till the day they died.
I agree. You see old movies of them, even when they were divorced, and you can just see that incredible connection that they had. And you don't see it in Being the Ricardos at all. I thought Being the Ricardos would dig a little bit into their relationship. It did. It wasn't done well. It was let's just talk about all these scandalous things that happened in their relationship. Okay, so areas that we disagree with. This is the majority of the movie. So there's just a lot. We were just really big I Love Lucy fans, and this is just something that we just want to, and we're big Fascinating Womanhood fans. So it's all kind of coming together, and we want to talk about it. So what's the first one?
Well, right in the beginning, there's a scene where he says, honey, I'm home. This is not supposed to be on taped show. This was their real life.
This is just their,
Well, she said, where the H have you been, you Cuban nitwit? That kind of hurt my heart to hear her say that. And then she hits him.
Bongo player.
I was playing Cosby. Hey!
And they get into a big argument. And that was not pleasant.
It's literally the first scene that you see of them is that. And that sets
the tone.
It's so cliche, I Love Lucy versus Lucy and Desi.
But she looks so feminine. They show her and she looks so
beautiful
feminine.
In that first scene. She's wearing these cute little, a little nightie, and she looks so soft and pretty. But then her voice is just, she sounds so harsh. And why does she? Well, she was angry with him in the first scene because she thought that she had heard rumors in the media. But that's not the point. The point is that that's not how you approach someone. You approach your husband about
even if he had just come from a fling, having an affair. If you want your marriage to survive, and even if you don't care, that is not the kind of, like, you don't need to ever talk like that.
I mean, she basically complains almost the entire movie about things that she doesn't even need to complain about. She just constantly complains about. She's almost like she creates complaints out of nowhere.
That was true, you idiot.
Don't panic, it's simple. I asked you to do me a small favor. I did the calculation. In the course of 1 week, I see you 1/20th as much as your second trombone player.
Crappy little roles in pictures I wouldn't pay a nickel to see.
Why is this so hard to understand?
Well, both of us noticed she didn't smile. She never
Hardly at
smiled.
all.
No.
But if you watch old clips of her, she was always smiling. And maybe that was just in public, but even in the scenes where she's in public, she's not smiling very much. She's kind of putting on a fake smile.
Well, and I have to say, I hope Vivian Vance wasn't the way they portrayed her, because she was really mean in the show. I know she didn't like William
Offensive.
Frawley.
She was a victim the whole show, the whole movie. They
And I
portrayed
don't know whether I hope that's not true, because it's not how I pictured her at all. Regardless of what the truth was, if we find ourselves behaving like that, we can see how unattractive, unappealing. Not just that, it doesn't lead to your happiness.
We've all been there where we're complaining, like myself included, we feel like a victim. We've all been there. But what this movie shows is how that kind of trap of falling into it regularly, how it makes you appear to others. And it's very unattractive.
Could be worse.
How?
You could be playing Ethel.
And how it would make you feel if you were doing it. There's just several scenes with her that I thought, boy, I hope that doesn't portray the real thing.
The dinner scene, you drunken yance.
Have we hired anyone to play Ethel yet?
I mean, some of the things she said to William Frawley, like he was old and stuff, it was uncalled for, unnecessary. She could have actually validated him. He was a great actor.
And he actually did have a lot of value in the show. And she, instead of recognizing that, she focused on herself. She constantly invalidated him in front of the writers too. And it was just, and then he did it back to her.
When can we expect you to be funny?
They did it back and forth. And I think if she had chosen, you know what, I'm going to take the high road and I'm not going to insult him and just see what happens, I think she would have found that he would have stopped eventually doing it back to her, and he would have made peace with her if she would have just, I mean, of course you could say that he could have done the same thing, but this is Fascinating Woman and we're just talking to the ladies, and the ladies take the higher road and don't do that.
Well, the point for us to learn is, when we see this, if we think, if I was in her position, how could I have made things better? It was testy and tense.
Well, and it felt like none of the women portrayed in the movie were allowed to be feminine other than the way that their appearance was. There's also a scene where Desi and her are finally together and they haven't seen each other. And she picks an argument with him. He says to her,
maybe it'd be better if we didn't spend the little time we have arguing about why we don't have more time.
He was telling her a fascinating womanhood principle, which is, we always say, you say this in your book, if you don't get to spend a lot of time with your boyfriend or your husband, and then you're resentful of it, and then you actually get a night out with him or a date night, and then you guys end up fighting the whole time, that's going to lead to him not wanting to spend time with you, and it's going to lead to your relationship not having any romance.
It's like when my mother-in-law was still living, and she was a wonderful, wonderful person, but she fell into a few bad habits. She would sometimes call Bob. First thing she would do was put him down for not calling her more often. I remember him saying to her once, I would call you more often if I didn't think you were going to bawl me out for not calling you more often for the first 10 minutes. That whole thing, it's psychologically, he told her, just like Desi told Lucy, he told her, this is causing a problem.
Right.
She didn't change it.
Well, she didn't take responsibility for the fact that she was part of that problem. He was there to kind of forget about the negative things. And I think some women might say, well, we need to address some things, and we only have a few precious moments, and we need to address some of these topics or these subjects, but you can address those things later, and you can take that precious moment to mend things and be happy for a moment, and the mending can come.
Well, remember, arguing, no one ever wins arguments. So you're not really settling anything anyway when you do that.
Yeah.
You're just kind of pouring out your emotions.
There's another scene with Lucy where she meets Donald, who is, I believe, the producer of the specific episode that they're filming in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Right off the bat, like, she insults him immediately.
I'm hazing you a little, Donald. It's just my way of saying I have no confidence in you at all.
I just cringed when I heard that. It was cringeworthy.
Well, it wasn't even professional. I mean, I know that Lucille Ball is apparently the whole point of the movie is to portray how tough she was, and that's fine. I'm sure she probably was really tough. A lot of successful actresses and comedians are tough, but that scene was really sad that she would say, I have no confidence in you at all. Upon meeting this brand new director, and his face, you can see he is just, he's very offended by it and embarrassed. She embarrasses him in front of everyone.
Well,
for no
that's
reason.
one of the things that can invalidate a man quicker than anything is his competency. She said, you're not competent at all.
But they didn't even explain it. They didn't even explain why she would say that about, why was she so upset with him? He was very polite.
And it doesn't, since he was picked to be the director for that episode, it won't have made the episode better.
Everyone was visibly tense. It didn't have a good outcome at all. It didn't make her look intimidating. It made her look bad. She challenges the whole team of writers in such an abrasive way throughout the whole entire movie. She's just constantly challenging everyone and belittling everyone, men, women, especially men.
Let's talk about it after lunch.
Hang on. Desi, does that work for you?
Works perfect.
We'll talk about it after lunch. No, it wasn't.
What?
Good. Wasn't good.
Oh, let's go back.
We don't want to fall into any of those traps of being like that. She was really snarky when she flirted with him,
My name is Desi.
I don't have that kind of time.
which I don't care for. I don't think it's very feminine. It certainly isn't very charming. It's like it was all about being sensual.
Can I call you Lucy?
I think we should keep this professional, don't you?
That does not produce the greatest marriages. That kind of a beginning to the relationship is not on a solid foundation. They didn't really know each other.
Use a line on me. You've never road tested on anyone. I dare you.
They just were flirty and she was snarky.
Well, they show her sleeping with him almost immediately, and it's very transactional for her. Regardless of whether that's true, that's not what Fascinating Womanhood is about. That's very high risk behavior. She is engaged to someone when she meets him, and she still sleeps with him almost right off the bat.
Yes.
You don't love me and I don't love you, and you cheat on me every chance you can get, and I pretend I'm stupid, so I'm moving out.
Doesn't even smile when the first night when they're together. She's very businessy. And again, that does not fit the stories in the books that I've read about her and him and how in love they were. It just, for some reason, the movie wanted to make her appear so much more masculine. It felt masculine that she looked at their first night as transactional.
Well, and then as soon as they're done having sex, she calls her fiance on the phone and breaks up with him. And it's so poor character.
Well, they show Desi kind of being, he kind of loved that she did that. They show him loving that she did that, like that it was funny or that it was cute.
Validating for him, yeah.
What were you saying?
It's hard to believe that would happen and that he would react that way, especially just, he didn't even know she was engaged. So that could have brought on a whole other kind of argument, but the movie portrayed it as you can act this way, you can be casual like this with people that you're sleeping with, and then you can get these great results. The guy will think that it's cute that you did that, and it's just a fantasy.
The point is that Hollywood often portrays even fictional characters this way, and it doesn't lead to deep, long-lasting, long-term relationship. There's a slim chance it could, but it's super high risk, and it almost never works out. In Fascinating Womanhood, and particularly in my book, we talk about building a foundation of your relationship for it to last and levels of relationships. They didn't do any of that. And keeping in mind, everybody knows, it's been out there for years, that Desi was not faithful to her, and he was a drinker, and that is a huge problem in relationships.
But she wasn't faithful to him either. It was a very toxic kind of back and forth that they had. But what we're saying, though, isn't that it was her fault or his fault. They had some other issues that aren't shown in the movie. They don't get into all that. But what they do show in the movie is Lucille Ball being this hard, abrasive, kind of trying to be a man, career-obsessed woman, and it shows some of the repercussions. There's a scene where Desi is telling the writers, he's trying to stand up for Lucy, tells the writers, oh, Lucy just checked the wrong box with the,
the thing with the communism.
He was trying to protect her. Maybe it didn't come across very good in the words that he chose, but his intent was good. She got upset with him privately afterwards and said, you said that I checked the wrong box. You made me look stupid. And he was shocked that she was upset by that, because he thought he was being her hero and trying to protect her.
And I didn't check the wrong box.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
And that was a really sad scene too, because it was like,
Yeah,
why didn't you just accept that?
It's all he could think of
Yeah.
to get those producers off of her back who were accusing her of being a communist.
A long time ago, Lucy accidentally checked the wrong box on her voter registration. That's the first act of a new episode right there.
He meant well, and she just berated him for it.
Did that
Scene
a
when
lot.
she tells the producers that she's pregnant. Oh, that scene is just so hard to watch. She tells them that they're pregnant, and she literally, there's no smile, there's no facial expressions. It's like she is just staring, and she's like, "We're pregnant."
Looking at Lucy's face, I thought for sure.
I'm pregnant.
It's not at all what I was going to say.
That's what we came to talk about.
And that she's expecting everyone to get excited. But the fact is, no one gets excited because they're not excited. She's not excited.
I know it seems like no one said congratulations, but that cannot be. Is this
No. You're right. You're right. Sorry.
Oh, it's wonderful news.
Congratulations.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, but every time I hear somebody that I know is pregnant, it is never like that. It's never, especially someone that wants a baby desperately. You don't say,
They would know
"I'm
that she
pregnant."
did.
I mean, when I was pregnant and I was working with both of my kids, it was a reveal. It was exciting. These were people that I worked with. These are people that Lucy worked with. Why did she say it like that in such a business kind of way? It just seemed so strange. And she wasn't happy.
I don't know. It's a mystery, but we can, I guess, learn from what she's doing about if you can see something in someone that you think, I don't like the way that's turned out, you can work on yourself so that you don't ever even approach that kind of a thing. You're more sensitive to people around you.
There was a scene when Vivian Vance was hurt when Lucy made the comment about the water spitting.
The very idea that Ethel's a cute young chick should make Desi choke.
Desi is supposed to spit out water at the thought that Vivian Vance, Ethel, is a cute young chick. And Vivian Vance was upset about that. I think that part, the reason why we put that part in there is because that was Lucy's character not being kind to a fellow female. She said, "It's funny, just deal with it. It's funny." And it hurt Vivian Vance's feelings. And I think Vivian Vance probably should have just known that she signed on for this to be in a comedy show and there was going to be pokes. But Lucy didn't handle those hurt feelings.
I would have thought Vivian Vance, now this is just about the show, I would have thought Vivian Vance was a professional enough actress that she would think that was the character of Ethel and not Vivian Vance that was
right. But even if she was offended and it really was real and stuff, I think the way that Lucy handled it was like, just deal with it. I didn't like that scene. It just made it look like the two of them had a toxic relationship that wasn't kind to each other, when I know, in fact, they did have a good relationship.
Everyone here stands shoulder to shoulder with you, and no one feels funny because we're scared to death, and you're not helping by jumping up and down on everyone who works here.
I just don't like that they portrayed their friendship as contentious like that. There's a scene when he says, "Lucy, you change subjects faster than any."
You change subjects faster
Keep
than...
up. It's not hard.
That's where she doesn't understand that women can multitask better than men. She has no understanding of that. She says, "Keep up." She's trying to scold him like a parent child. Desi probably was, sure, is shown to be like that. He was a lot more of the relationship person in that marriage. He's the one that would organize these parties at their houses for all their friends. It's hard to see it because understanding Fascinating Womanhood, we realize, no, don't do that.
One of the things that's really hard for me about that scene is that Desi is Cuban and English is not his first language. And so for her to talking that quickly with so many subjects and being a female and him being a male, men and women think differently. Men and women discuss things differently. Then you add in the language part of it. And it just felt like she wasn't understanding him at all. She was being very self-centered in that moment. And it was just difficult to watch that moment because it's something that a lot of women do. It's a mistake that a lot of us make and we don't realize it, that it's okay if he's asking you to slow down or if he's asking you to clarify something. It doesn't mean that he's not listening to you. It means that he may just be processing it slower than you are.
You may be kind of multitasking. We're kind of ninjas at that. Men don't tend to be real good at that. And there's no recognition of it or patience with him.
And to say it's not hard, keep up, was just so
invalidating.
Invalidating.
Very invalidating. And then it was also painful when he told her that they were talking about how they never have time together. And he said, "Just stay home and let me work."
You could quit the film business and just be my wife. But you ain't gonna do that, right?
No.
And she says no. And in that moment, I thought her career is number one for her, not her marriage. She wants her marriage to work, but her career is number one.
Not only was it number one, but she wouldn't even give him the chance to just try it. she just was an absolute flat out no. And I think this is probably very true to how they were in real life. And it's sad. And she did choose her career. And some women do choose their career over their marriage. And I'm not saying that you can't have a career and be married, not at all. But when you put it number one, meaning it's everything, it's first and foremost all the time, you're taking some really high risks in your relationship. And this is demonstrated very well, in a bad way, in the movie. There's another scene where she says,
Why is this so hard to understand?
she's just constantly kind of picking on him for how he thinks and how they're communicating with each other. Just in general, throughout the whole movie, he asks her about her dreams. Do you notice that? What are your dreams? What are your goals? She's constantly talking about, I want a home. And then she brings it up later after they're married.
What's your ambition?
A home. With a family and dinner time. You once asked me what my ambition was, you remember?
She keeps talking about her dreams, but then she's not really willing to work on those dreams. And part of the home wasn't just having a house. It was having a home with a family. Happy. Like she describes it in the movie. I want this home and this ambiance, and I want a family and all these things. But then she doesn't really want to put in the work. She wants him. I think this is such a key part of this movie that is not positive, because so many of us women, I'm guilty of it too. We fall into these moments where we expect others to fulfill our dreams. And I need this from you to get to my dreams. But we're not really willing to say, well, what do I need to do to get to my dreams? She basically only wanted to pay for her home. She didn't really want to be in her home. Even when she is home, she's thinking of work.
Wanted so bad to go back in time and give her Fascinating Womanhood. And because I really like Lucille Ball.
I'm a big fan of hers. Yeah, I really love Lucille Ball, but this is just so hard to watch. What about the scene when she tells the RKO president to go F himself? She shows.
I know. I hope that wasn't true. That's so ugly.
So unprofessional. She was a professional woman. I mean, everything you read about her, she was professional. That just is really hard to believe that she would say that to the RKO president.
That's not professional.
She just was unable to restrain herself. It's almost like she just was in the movie. It's almost like she was just, everything that she thought came out of her mouth.
I would think it would be if that person were real, it would be very difficult to work with them, that people would not want to be around her. There's
another scene where William Frawley offers to drive her home. It's late at night.
I want to drive you home.
And she said,
I am the biggest asset in the portfolio of the Columbia Broadcasting System. The biggest asset in the portfolio.
It's such a weird scene. Like, she's acting like the fact that he would offer to drive her home makes her less than him.
Yeah, and he was very supportive of her, at least by everything I've read.
She addresses the CBS men so disrespectfully. She doesn't even turn around. The men take their hats off for her and address her so kindly, and she immediately goes on the defense.
Lucille Ball.
Yes, sir.
David Levy, head of comedy development, CBS.
David Hart, head of current programming, CBS.
Well, David and David, I've been in a current comedy at CBS, and I've never heard of either of you.
The men end up offering her I Love Lucy anyway, but she was not gracious at all. She just walks into these rooms with these meetings with these men and is walking in as a victim immediately. You can see it in all these scenes. She wasn't really a powerful businesswoman. She was a victim.
She was suspicious of everyone.
In the movie.
Not the real person.
In the end of the movie, there's a scene where the credits say Lucy filed for divorce on this date. I just thought that was really odd that they did that at the very end of the movie. It didn't say, the movie wasn't about their relationship. It was about their career and like a little side of their relationship. But then the credits say Lucy filed from Desi Arnaz divorce, blah, blah, blah. What was up with that? Like, why did the movie focus on that? Was it meaning that they were siding with her and saying, thank goodness she got rid of that bum? Like, what was that?
I don't know. It was random to me. I didn't understand it.
It seemed very celebratory. It's almost like they wanted the audience to think, oh, thank goodness, that really cool, tough business lady who's so talented got rid of that guy. Yes, end of the movie. Why was that? I don't know. I just didn't like that part.
No. Okay, so what would have helped her? Even if she was a career woman her whole life, FW would have helped her, could have helped her tremendously. It doesn't mean that they would have stayed married. If Desi Arnaz was a womanizer and a drinker, it wouldn't have lasted. But there's things that could have helped.
Some things, just some quick things that we could just say would have been helpful. If you're someone out there that kind of relates to that relationship that she had, or you relate to her in general and you want some solutions. What do you got?
Validating him, recognizing his need for competency, frankly, having a little more character. Now, this is not to say the person Lucille Ball, but the character in the movie. having more character, having better social skills than that. It would have been good for her. Making him number one is probably, I should have said that first. Her career was number one. And
Doesn't
maybe
mean that she couldn't have a career.
No, but and I don't know because I'm not an actress, but like Barbara Walters said, her kind of career does not work well with marriage and family because it's so all consuming to get to the top. Maybe Lucille Ball's career was like that too for her. But you have to know, but making him number one, she wanted a marriage. She was crazy about him. She wanted it to last and truly last. She did not understand or know the value of making him number one and validating the other men around her, the other women, Vivian Vance, all of those things. She was interested in decorating her home, but she wasn't interested in ambiance or creating home life. To being a domestic goddess does not require you scrub all your own toilets. If you don't have time, you can hire people to do it. But being a domestic goddess means you recognize and care about the ambiance in your home and the importance of home life. Because in the show, she was complaining that Desi was always going on his boat and not coming home. He didn't seem to want to be home. And she hated that, but she didn't seem to have any idea how to turn that around.
She just kind of wanted him to do what she said, like a child. And she didn't really understand the part she played in it. And it doesn't excuse his awful behavior. He was a bit of a rascal and he had a lot of problems, but they both had problems and neither one of them really were willing to work on them. They just kind of expected each other to fulfill each other's dreams. There's a scene when William Frawley says something dies inside a man when people call him old.
Something dies inside a man. It just dies. The first time he hears a girl call him old.
And Lucy responds with,
You two are good actors.
that scene, as far as like when we're talking about solutions, like that's such a good example of just understanding men being a solution. She just didn't understand. He was trying to tell her, you are kind of killing me inside a little bit with some of the comments that you're making. And instead of accepting that feedback to understand, oh, this is a moment where I can understand men and what they feel. He's literally saying how he feels inside. And she doesn't accept that.
She doesn't recognize it or validate it. She doesn't.
That was a really difficult scene. She misread and ignored that moment. It was a really key moment. It was actually a good moment for the writers, whoever wrote Being the Ricardos, to put that in there because it's true. Had she, you said, embraced her kind of domestic goddess and really paid attention to her home, made him number one, seek to understand men. I think that was really hard for her. Just those.
Not even just Desi, William Frawley, the producers. And by the way, I have, you know me, we've talked about this for years. I think the writers of I Love Lucy were some of the most brilliant writers I have ever seen. And I was shocked at how people were critical of their writing.
Well, it's a shame. Like we started in the beginning. It's just a shame that there were so many painful things in the movie. And it was still, I'm still glad I saw it. I'm still glad I watched it. For those out there that are maybe haven't seen it and they're like, oh, maybe I don't want to see this. I'm still glad that I saw it because it was interesting and there were some things that I didn't know about the show. But overall, from a relationship point of view and Fascinating Womanhood, it was hard. It was tough to watch, but it is a good visual of kind of what not to do.
This movie was more often than not a lesson of don't let this happen to you.
Well, that's really all we have for the Being the Ricardos review. I hope you all enjoyed it and took something away from it. And if you like this movie review, give us some more suggestions of movies you'd like us to do. We can do more of these if they're helpful. Drop a comment down below if you feel like this was a helpful video or you enjoyed hearing about it today. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you know when we have a new video come out. Also hit like so it helps our channel grow. And we're here every week. So come back next time and we'll see you then.
See you then.
Bye.